I'm Jennifer Jones. I manage the Economics Career Office in the Department of Economics. My office is in Monroe 228 on the second floor of Monroe Hall. It's wonderful to see you all here. Welcome to our How I Got This Job program with Danny Higginbotham and Will Jones from Capital One and Bank of America, respectively. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yep, thank you.
Students, could you please share in the chat your year and your major, or if you're undeclared, that you are undeclared, please share that so Will and Danny have a sense who is in the room with us. And I'm just going to read some of those off as they come through. Okay, I'm just going to repeat that. In the chat, please tell us what your major is and what year you are. Okay, great. We have a lot coming through. We have almost 50 people here, so I'd hope to get a few more. There we go. Great. All right. Wow. Okay. Econ and stats, undeclared. Econ and Chinese. Lots of third-year econ. Econ and English. Some undeclared. Some students who are econ now and are thinking of double majoring econ and comm. Econ and math. Some Spanish. Econ foreign affairs. CS. Bunch of undecideds. Okay, great. Thank you everyone so much for that. Okay, great. All right, so moving right along here. One more announcement. Because we had a glitch in Handshake, we were unable to have people sign up for office hours with Danny and Will, which is really great news for all of you, because that means it's first come, first serve. And through the chat, Maggie is going to send the sign up genius so that you can sign up for office hours, which run from 5:45 to 6:30. Only sign up if you are absolutely going to be there, okay? Because we won't have a wait list, and we want to use Danny and Will's time well. They're dedicating an hour and a half to us today, and we don't want to waste it, all right? This is an awesome opportunity. Okay, great. So Maggie, you're going to be inundated. Go ahead and manage that, and I'll take care of this here right now. Okay, great. Thanks, folks. All right, so Danny and Will, welcome. Could you each start by introducing yourself and giving us a skim of your UVA resume? Okay, fairly recently you were here. You were working on building your own career experiences and trajectory. Could you talk with us a little bit about that? And feel free, just either one of you, to jump in, and then the other one can mute. And that way we'll know who's ready to speak when.
Yep, I'm happy to go first, Will. Does that work with you?
Kick it off.
Sounds good. Okay, so I was at UVA from 2015 to 2019. When I came in, I didn't, exactly know what I wanted to do major-wise. I was kind of always knew that I would do like some type of like kind of, econ or business type of major, but I ended up majoring in econ and psychology. Would never have guessed that beforehand going into school, but I graduated in 2019. Outside of those two majors, I'd say probably my kind of like biggest involvement at school was through student council, and more specifically worked on the appropriations committee, which essentially is pretty much taking the money that comes in through the student activity fund and allocating it out via all the different CIOs at UVA. So that would be kind of my quick brief intro. I also grew up in Charlottesville, Virginia, so not too far from going back home. It was always good to go home, get some laundry done, super convenient there. And then now I'm currently living in the Washington, D.C. area.
Nice. So for myself, I just graduated this past spring, actually. And I was an econ major with a concentration in public policy. So spent a good amount of time in the econ department throughout my time. Outside of just classes, some of my bigger involvements were with the club Colonnade Capital, which was this student-run investment fund. And that kind of was what got me interested in my current career in investment banking. Kind of taught me some of the basics that got me really interested in it. In addition to that, I was also a volunteer at the local Albemarle High School as a college mentor and tutor. I played on the club lacrosse team, and I was in Phi Psi.
Okay, great. Thank you. Did either one of you have a connection to finance before you came to UVA? And if so, what was it?
I did not have any connection beforehand, and I actually didn't really get interested in it until after my third year when I did an internship. Wasn't with the current role I have now, but yeah, it wasn't until I was well into college that I really had my interest in this field.
Yeah, same with Will. No real connection to the industry, but I think that kind of just as I took on more classes, especially within the econ side of things, that I became just more interested in it.
Okay, great. So let's go from there. So then how did you decide to jump into applying for roles in financial services and, ultimately lead you to your work, Danny, with Capital One and Will with Bank of America?
Yeah, I'm happy to start that one off. So I said I was a part of Culinary Capital, and that club really got me interested in more of the business side of things, as opposed to just purely more of the economics courses, which were looking more at like financial markets. And so basically in that club, I kind of got the introduction to researching companies, kind of digging into their financial statements, seeing how they operated, learning about how they fit in with other companies in their industry. It also got me started on the basics of financial modeling, which I found to be really interesting and very, very gratifying when it all came together. So that's kind of what piqued my interest. And then, kind of like Danny said, I started taking some classes that explore that area. So within the econ department, I took the corporate finance class, which I found to be really, really interesting. One of my favorite classes at UVA. And after doing that, I decided to pursue some internships within the realm of finance. And so I used Handshake a lot, which I'm sure all of you guys know, or if you don't, you should definitely look into it. And it was great because they had so many roles that I could filter by finance and kind of like sift through and see what was actually interesting to me, and wound up applying to a bunch and doing a lot of interviews, and eventually settled on a role that I thought was right for me. But yeah, I'd say classes and then some of my clubs were really what got the interest going.
Okay, great. Just one quick follow-up. In Colonnade Capital, did they teach you financial modeling? How did you pick that up?
Yeah, so as an econ major, that's something that doesn't come into play. So I knew I wanted to find another way to get that. And in the club, we did learn that. They had teaching instructions every week on Sunday nights. And I know there's a bunch of clubs that I could put a little list in the chat later that all do that kind of basic intro to modeling if you guys are interested in that.
That's terrific. Thank you. Okay, Danny, you're up.
Yeah, slightly different. So I think for me, my personal interest is a little bit more on like the consumer side of things. And what I mean by that is just kind of looking at like, personal finance, and also from there, really like thinking about just how people, make decisions more like kind of a microeconomic level. And so from there, I actually ended up, taking this intro to micro, 101, like probably all of you guys have already at some point, for all you non first years, and really found it enjoyed. And then I decided to kind of pursue internship at a local bank my second year, which from there just kind of getting to work with several different like customers and learning about how they manage their financial lives, kind of wanted me to think into seriously about pursuing a career in that space. And so kind of into my third year, that's what I had set out just to apply to several different internships. I was able to get the offer for an internship as a financial analyst at Capital One. And then from there, I decided to return full time. And it's been a great 2 years or so far. So no complaints from me.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, so let's then talk a little bit about your jobs. So Danny, what is Capital One? I think everybody has heard of it. Anyone from Northern Virginia has probably seen, the compound if they've been in McLean. Can you talk just a little bit about Capital One, what they do and what your role is?
Yeah, happy to do that. And I know that this is titled like a, kind of a commercial banking, also on the investment banking side of things. I'm sure you've seen, TV ads for Capital One. You guys are thinking, credit cards, and then obviously that they do a ton of advertising, but also Capital One does have a commercial lending business. And a lot of that business is to help more fund the consumer side of things. But more broadly, huge in the credit card industry and also within the auto loan industry. Currently, I am working within our kind of retail bank, and more specifically working on marketing checking and savings accounts. But I did have the opportunity to have some experience working within our commercial bank for a little bit, so could probably jump in for any potential questions come up in the Q&A that more on the commercial lending side of things.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Will, same question. Bank of America, huge name, has multiple parts, right? Can you talk to us broadly what Bank of America does, what your division does, and what you do for your work?
Yeah, so very similar to Danny. I'm sure you guys have seen plenty of stuff from Bank of America, whether it's at sports stadiums or ads and stuff like that. That's more of the retail side of banking that you'll typically see, which is more of those like brick and mortar shops that you have in Charlottesville, for example, right on the corner. But what I do in the investment bank is more focused on working with companies, specific companies. And in particular, since Bank of America is really large, has a massive balance sheet, we mostly work with larger Fortune 500 companies to kind of support their needs. So to give you a quick background on my division, I'm in the leveraged finance team. And so from a very high level, what we do is we structure and syndicate leveraged loans and high yield bonds for non-investment grade companies. And so these are oftentimes very large. And so some examples of like deals we do that you might have heard of would be leveraged buyouts, acquisition financings, financing for capital expenditures or growth segments within a business. And then we do refinancings for companies. And so examples of some of the clients would be large private equity firms like Blackstone and KKR. And then those massive Fortune 500 companies, like I mentioned, are kind of like the bread and butter that we work with. And something to note that's pretty interesting about my group, that differs from most other investment banking groups, is that we're industry agnostic, which means we can work with a company in any industry. So it could be in consumer and retail, technology, media and telecom. It could be a sports company, gaming, real estate, healthcare. The list kind of goes on and on. So it kind of provides this really interesting avenue where you get to see companies of all different sizes, shapes, industries. And that's really nice if you have like many interests like I did and didn't want to necessarily, silo myself into one thing. I could kind of keep broad at the beginning of my career, which was really appealing to me.
So, Will, in some other firms, are they not industry agnostic? Are people more assigned to specific areas or verticals? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. So that's true of any investment bank for the most part, including Bank of America. So there is a full specialized healthcare group, commercial and retail group, et cetera, et cetera. My group just happens to be different. And I believe it's there's only a few others, maybe one or two others that are actually probably only one other that's industry agnostic. So it's fairly unique actually within investment banking.
Okay, great. I didn't realize that myself. Wonderful. Thank you. So can you tell us what you might do in a typical day, or a project that you've been working on, and give us a little bit of a deeper dive into what our students could imagine that they might do if they come in similar roles in the future?
So is this me or?
Either one. Your mic is on, so you go.
Yeah, sounds good. So I guess it's a typical day for me, but more broadly, as I had mentioned, the team that I work on mainly focuses on marketing for checking and savings accounts. So really kind of what our objective is to figure out kind of the right sweet spot for how much we want to spend marketing checking accounts and how much we want to spend marketing savings accounts. And there's definitely several different factors that go into that. For example, on the savings side of things, in this past, with everything going on with the pandemic, right when the pandemic had started, especially with getting, government stimulus coming in, lots of people were not spending money on things, but also we're getting these checks on the way as well. And so it was easier to grow deposits at that time. So we would lower our interest rate that we were paying on those deposits. Now, as we hopefully, get out and exit the pandemic here, it's really going to be kind of an evaluation of what do we want to set our interest rates to get more deposits as consumers want to spend more, and we have to fund those loans as well. But also we want to continue to grow our checking accounts because as we've kind of learned, customers that open up checking accounts more likely to also have cards, and just kind of, you just want to create an ultimate one-stop shop for every single financial need that a customer may have. So kind of as my typical day will look at is, how many, marketing driven accounts we're able to drive. And then we kind of compare that against how many people would have just opened up an account regardless of if they had seen it on an ad or not. And so I've only been on the team here for about like two months, but I'm starting to learn. One of the first things you learn in econ is how incentives affect behavior. So if you incentivize someone through a cash offer or something like that, it is, I'm starting to learn that like it actually really does make a difference. But also just figuring out like, advertising, as you see so many ads and you feel like you don't ever like react to the ad, it is surprisingly more effective than I would have in my initial hypothesis of things. But it's figuring out kind of the sweet spot between checking and savings for us.
Do you also want me to give a day in the life, so to speak?
Yeah, that would be great.
All
Or
right.
take us through, a project that you've been working on, something maybe that you've been putting together with your team.
Sure, yeah. So similar to Danny, I've only been with my team for about 2 months now. And a typical day for me, you have to be in the office by 9 a.m. at the latest. And then each day is honestly very different because the number of deals you work on and their different stages of their life cycle all vary. So for me, I could be on anywhere from 4 to 10 deals at one singular time. So time management is very, very critical because you might have one deal that is in the very beginning, early phases of negotiation in weeks 1 and 2, and you could have a deal that you've been working on for 6 months. It's at the later stage, ready to close, and there's just constant components that need to be put out. So for me, my day is kind of just based on where each deal is. So an example of some transactions that I recently got put on, I'm working on a debt recapitalization for a company, which is kind of the most common and simple leverage finance transaction you'd see. I'm also working on a much, much larger leverage buyout, which is much more time consuming and complicated. And then some other things that come up kind of on a weekly basis are market updates. So, my group really has to look at what the loan market's looking like on a daily basis. So when it's my turn for the rotation in a few months, I'm gonna on a daily basis have to kind of put together a research report basically every morning and email it out to my team. Then on weekly calls, kind of break down the industry in terms of what's happening across leverage finance with all banks, all companies, so that the team can kind of stay up to date on current events. So yeah, those are some of the basic like day-to-day things that I would do.
Okay, great. Thank you. I want to give the students an opportunity at this point to follow up with any questions on what we've covered so far. So if you have a question on where we've been so far, go ahead and please enter it in the chat, or go ahead and turn on your mic, introduce yourself, your name, your year, and go ahead and ask your question. Anything? I'll wait about 30 seconds.
Hi, my name is Max. I'm a third-year econ and math major. I guess question sort of relating to day in the life is what are the hours like? You said you come to the office at 9 a.m. When are you leaving? Do you have to skip lunch, or what's going on with the work-life balance in these industries?
Yeah, so the average hours per week is somewhere between 75 and 80 for a typical week. So each day the hours kind of break down by, like I said, like what is needed for the next morning, right? So if you're on a live deal and there's a lot of moving parts and you've been working all day and 11 p.m. comes around and somebody says, you know what, this needs to be done by 9 a.m. It's not quite finished yet. It's not really a matter of, work on it until this time and then leave the office. It's just get it done by 9 a.m. and whenever it's right, then you're done. So on a day like that, it could be a late night, but on a day where, the next assignment you have to do is your market update, do at 9 a.m. and you finish it at 9:30 and there's nothing else for you to do, you could go home then. It really varies based on what's due, like the next deliverable. And like I said, usually you have things that are due pretty constantly because you are on a large number of deals. Like you could be on 8 deals at a given time. So there's usually something due the next day, which is kind of where this like component of like always staying very busy comes from.
Yep, and I guess on my end of things, so it's like I guess a slightly different industry, even though it's like relatively within a bank side of things. But I'm definitely more on a 9 to 5 cycle with my work. And with your question regarding lunch, usually depending on the day, like sometimes I'll just like eat especially being remote, just like get a sandwich and just pull up on my Zoom calls or whatever. But I'd say average week is between like 40 to 50 hours. And mainly a lot of that's also just that like my months are kind of get busier like the month end and the beginning of the month. And so when those times hit, like you can get like more to like that 50 hours per week. But definitely it's not on the 80-hour like work week cycle, but I do feel your pain there. Well, hopefully get some sleep when you can.
Okay, great. Thank you for being candid with our group. So where are you both working out of now? Are you both at home? Do you go into the office at all? What are your situations?
Yep. So right now I'm remote for the time being. Our office that I would be going to would be in Tyson's Corner, which is right outside the Washington, D.C. area. The scheduled return to the office is supposed to be in November, but given the current Delta variant situation, it's just kind of a little to be determined. But when we go back in, what they've announced is that on Mondays and Fridays it'll be kind of a hybrid work model where Tuesdays through Thursdays, most associates are expected to come in. And on kind of Mondays and Fridays, it's more work from home is going to be the norm.
Yeah, I'm currently stationed in New York. We return to the office October 4th, which is very needed. A little too much time sitting around. And then for us, Bank of America's main locations are in Charlotte and in New York. And then there are a few other locations. There's a small investment banking group in San Francisco for technology, media, and telecom. But aside from that, it's pretty much Charlotte and New York are the two main hubs.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. All right, so let's get back to how you found these jobs. So it sounds like both of you found the intern positions on Handshake. Is that right?
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay, so you found these positions, and then what happened? So you're getting your resumes together. Did you use resources here and the ECO at the UVA Career Center, other people? Talk with us about your strategy there.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in and just kind of more, I guess more specifically to job they had. So they offered a kind of like case workshop before the round of interviews, but something that I kind of did beforehand was because I guess I haven't been on Handshake looking for things, but I do know that the career office at least offers kind of mock interviews and like kind of just case type workshops. And so I like try to leverage those resources while, at least in the beginning part when you're kind of, because you can submit your application in and it might take a while to hear back, especially with there just being like just a general deadline, but would recommend, especially before like classes really pick up later into the semester with exams, to take, just to do whatever preparation you can in the beginning side of things. I guess for the people on the call that aren't third or fourth years, kind of just a piece of advice that I would give is maybe not specifically to Capital One, but whatever you like, it's never too early to start kind of preparing for these types of things. So don't feel like you necessarily have to do it, only in third year or fourth year. It's always a good, useful skill to always have, especially if you even down the road, transition careers and interview at other places. It's just always good to like have kind of hone in on that skill set.
Right, so Danny, you're recommending then to practice, maybe have mock interviews before you even land an interview.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Sometimes, depending on the company, but you might have you might find out you have an interview and it's in like 1 week later, especially maybe for like a first round, like behavioral interview side of things. And those are just always things that like, I feel like you can, kind of get ahead of the game on.
Okay, great. Thank you. Will?
Yeah.
How did you get your job?
Yeah. So before I kind of jump into that, I just want to hammer on Danny's point because I think it's a really good one, and something that I definitely look back on and wish I had done more was kind of space out my preparation over a longer period of time. And what I wound up doing kind of by the time I was in my third year, fourth year type area, really like honing in on my recruiting, I treated the internship job process as like an additional class into my schedule in terms of wherever I kept my notes for what my homeworks were and stuff like that. I'd put like my weekly goals for prepping for interviews, putting out job applications, stuff like that. And for me, it really made the process more manageable because I remember at first being very overwhelmed by like, oh, you got to network all the time. You have to do technicals, behavioral. How's your resume looking? All this stuff. And kind of breaking it down weekly where I knew, okay, I'm trying to meet these goals for the week. And if I don't do it, it gets added to next week so I can catch up. That really made the process manageable. I think Danny made a really good point there. And then in terms of my process, so like I said earlier, I had an internship that I got through Handshake with BAML after my third year. It wasn't with the group that I'm currently in, but what I did was, had an interesting experience, kind of leveraged that into my current role by using my company's internal mobility systems. And it's interesting, a lot of companies, I'm sure Capital One has something similar, and I know almost every single investment bank does as well. If you talk to your, I guess the right term would be like the person who hired you, I'm not sure the technical name for it, but the person who recruited you, and you tell them, hey, this opportunity is great, but I'm looking to make a move. You get flagged in their system and they see your reviews from the past summer, your current resume, stuff like that. And then that's how I got my current job. But the initial way that I got interested in investment banking was through the Handshake posts where you can kind of get a bio and then go to a company's specific homepage and kind of learn about the role. I went to a lot of events like this for a lot of random things to kind of see what people were doing with their econ degrees. And then the most important thing for me with the investment banking role was talking to UVA alumni and then any other investment banker at a company I was interested in that would hop on the phone for a phone call. And I would just kind of try to tailor some very specific questions to their role and what their life was like to kind of actually get a better sense for the role from like a hands-on perspective. Because I think when you're just reading a company's description or, reading some articles online, you get a very one-sided sense of what a real day looks like. So for me, having those like real in-person or on the phone interactions was what really solidified my interest in this path.
Okay, great. Really helpful. So I'm going to ask you, what did you say to, how did you approach alumni to have those conversations? What was your initial email like? And then what were the conversations like? And this is for both of you, for Will and Danny.
Yeah,
Sure, yeah.
happy to jump in here. I think that, and Will, I think touch on this as well, but would recommend like with, if you reach out cold call email side of things, like no big deal if like no one, responds to you, like don't feel like discouraged by that. They just might have not seen it, could be like an old outdated address or something like that. But really I would use it as a way to kind of information gather versus like, hey, can you get me a job? Like really starting off the conversation, because especially this stage of, and even my stage of just, career development, really about just information gathering, like, learning about, asking about day-to-day of a job, asking just like basic, like, like how many hours a week, how long have you been at the firm? Like, why did you want to, why are you interested in this career? Like, and everyone else has been in your similar situation as well. And that's something that you also need to like, take into account as well. Especially, UVA alumni have been into these events as well. So would just always recommend just gathering as much information as you can. And you never know, someone maybe will be able to, they have an open role in their team, they're able to give you a referral, which kind of could give you like a leg up in a recruiting process. It never hurts to reach out. So would always recommend doing that.
Yeah, all good points. I would add, so for me, I sent a lot of what are called like cold emails where I didn't know the person specifically. I definitely used the like the little network I had from people who went to UVA above me who were doing investment banking, reached out to them, and that was oftentimes pretty successful because I had a personal connection to them. But I did a lot of cold emailing to try to get people on the phone. And, you do have to be pretty resilient because it doesn't feel great when you're shooting out a lot of emails and you're not getting a lot of responses, but that's just the nature of how it is. I mean, I'm sure Danny finds it the same way. You get so many emails on a daily basis. It can be overwhelming. So you really can't take it personally if somebody doesn't get back to you, but putting out a large volume of emails will help you actually get some people on the phone. And I kept it pretty short and sweet. I would say I'm an econ major, really interested in your company and investment banking. Here's a quick like one-line reason. I'd love to find a time to chat. If you're available anytime, I can give you my schedule. Very simple, shows you're interested. You don't need to write too much because they will not read it, trust me. but you just want to come off as interested and friendly. And then from there, any person that you get that I got a call with, I would always give them a little look up on LinkedIn to kind of see what group they're in. So I could then do some online research and kind of get some very specific questions towards what they do on a daily basis. Because one thing I learned was that rather than asking just very generic questions, you want to ask something that will really get them talking about what they do on a daily basis, because they'll be way more interested in explaining that to you than they will about, their meal perks or something, like some random question that you could probably find online. So doing the research was key. Not being upset when you didn't get emails back from people is very key. You got to stay persistent. And then trying to find, like, putting like 30 minutes of time towards a phone call beforehand to actually get some great questions was really important, because honestly, you really only need one really good connection at a bank for it to spiral into a really good opportunity. Because for me, when I had a great conversation with somebody, I would always end by asking them, hey, are there any other people that you enjoy working with that you think would be beneficial for me to meet? And if it was a good phone call and I felt comfortable saying that, they always put me in contact with one person. And then hopefully it goes well again. And then you kind of keep this snowball effect going. And next thing you know, you've talked to 3 or 4 people at a single company, and you can kind of get a sense, wow, I really like the way these people handle things. I love talking to them. I'm going to keep pursuing this company. And when it comes around to getting your resume pulled, having talked to a handful of people like that will really make you stand out.
Okay, really great advice here for everybody. There's a follow-up question. Do you have any tips for what to do after a networking call, like maintaining contact? How do you do that?
Yeah, definitely send a thank you note within 24 hours. Ideally by the end of the day, just 2 lines is it, just saying it was like phenomenal to talk to you. It was great to talk to you. I really enjoyed this one thing you said, or something like that. I look forward to connecting in the future. Really simple. You might not even get a response, but doing that within a day just shows that you really are interested and aren't just, doing this to everybody and just kind of like leaving it at that. It shows that you followed up.
Yep, I agree with that. And then more kind of specifically, for example, if have the call, goes well, and then you apply for a role at the company within the next couple of weeks, there was an open listing, just maybe following up and saying, hey, again, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me a couple of weeks ago. Just wanted to let you know that I applied for the company, and I just want to thank you for all your help in this process, like something simple like that. But then also they know that you applied, and then maybe they'll ping the recruiter, whoever's reviewing the resume, it's like, hey, I talked to this person, and seemed like they would maybe be a good fit for an interview or something like that. Can never hurt there.
Yeah, really great advice about staying in touch. And if you happen to find an article, that might be interesting to the alumni or other contacts you've spoken with, send it to them. I did this recently. Had an informational interview with one of our alums and learned that they were studying the gap in pay between genders. In fact, I read an article, Wall Street Journal, sent it their way, right? And that's just a nice way to stay connected. If you don't hear back from somebody, Danny and Will, how much time should you allow to go by before sending a second ping, or should you not do that?
Good. Yeah, I feel like I don't have like a perfect answer to this question, but I would say, I don't think it hurts to send a second. No, because maybe they missed the first one. I definitely wouldn't do it within like a week. Like I would maybe wait maybe a week or more. I feel like, but I also just like don't have a perfect answer there. But definitely wouldn't like want to just send like multiple back-to-back day emails or something, because then that can kind of come across as being a little too persistent.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think about a 1 week is fine, and there's nothing wrong with following up if you're genuinely interested. But exactly like Danny said, you don't want to come off as trying to take away too much of their time. So I'd say wait a week, follow up. You can reference that you're just following up, and simple as that.
Okay, great, thank you. So let's move. You both found your roles through internships. Initially had internships. So asking you to go back a little bit, you can think about the resumes that you submitted, what you think made them strong. Now you may actually be looking at resumes of people who are applying. So what would make a good resume in your field? And then my question after that, if you could answer together if you'd like, what are interviews like for with your employers?
Yeah, happy to jump in here. And again, this is like me saying this is like easier said than done, because especially with the current world that we're living in, it's tougher to get kind of some of these opportunities. But one of the things I always think is really important is just like getting any type of relevant experience. And I think that also the reason it's not just to have on quote like your paper on your like 1-page resume, but once you kind of get into interviews, especially on the behavioral side, a lot of questions will kind of be focused on like, tell me about a time when X, Y, and Z happened. And it not necessarily has to be relevant experience to like the specific industry that you're trying to go into, because as all these companies know, like, it's easier said than done to like in 2 years of school have like perfect experience to do this career. But I would always just recommend trying to, give yourself in the best position possible to be able to just talk about things during an interview. More specifically on the interview process. So for what Capital One does for at least kind of like more analyst level roles, and they have several different types of analyst roles. I started off as a financial analyst and have moved over to a business analyst role. But there's also a management program as well. I guess on the call there, I think I saw a couple CS answers as well. But there's a whole technology program. And I guess the technology program's a little bit different on the interview process, since there is like some level of coding required in the interview. But the kind of first round interview is focused on like a business case, which, it's usually like a 30 to 45 minute kind of walk through in some of the cases, like it could be nothing related to banking at all. Like it could be like, tell me about profitability within an ice cream truck business or something. So it can be like a kind of a wide range, but it's different in a sense of like some companies where it can be like, okay, how many parking spots are there in X, Y, and Z city? Where you kind of, what they want you to do in that situation is think through, okay, city population is roughly 100,000, X percentage of people have cars, etc. There is more of like a kind of like mathematical side to it. So you're allowed to like bring in a calculator and stuff. And then into the kind of the second round interviews, there'll be like a behavioral interview, another case, and then either a job fit or kind of a product type interview, kind of to learn more about kind of your creativity. But everything gets like outlined out kind of before you go into the interview. No real like kind of surprises of what to expect there.
Is it still going?
Yeah, so the interview process for me, and Jen, please hop in and tell me if I missed any of the components that you said, because I took a minute to look through the chat box. But the interview process for me was about 7 or 8 interviews with different group members, kind of ranging in roles from second-year analysts to third-year associates to, people who've been at the bank for over 10 years and really do a lot. And at first it was pretty behavioral. So asking kind of, walk me through your resumes, the beginning question. And you really kind of just have to have like a under 5-minute quick way to describe what you do at UVA, a few relevant courses, clubs you're in, stuff like that. And then kind of finish by talking about any prior work experiences that you think would be really relevant to the role. This can be at a pretty high level. And they want to just basically see that you can talk on your own for a few minutes and clearly state like what you do and how it relates to your role. And then it kind of goes into stuff, like, oh, this club, Culinary Capital you're in, seems really cool. Can you tell me what you do for it? Can you give me a little bit of a reason for why you love volunteering at the local high school? Stuff like that. They'll try to just get a sense for like how involved you actually are. So having some leadership roles and stuff that you really care about is really nice and kind of makes that resume pop a little bit. In addition to that, then there's often a more like technical component. Not all banks do it, but the vast majority do. And that's kind of stuff related to basic accounting, which could be something as simple as, you change one line item, you increase it by $10. How does this affect the 3 financial statements? There's lots of guides that even the career services department has, specifically the Vault guide is really good. And then it could get more technical, like, give me 3 ways to evaluate a company. What would you what would be the key market factors that would influence the industrials group? Or it could be something like, what was a major article this past week that you read in the paper that really interested you? So they can go from pretty surface level stuff to very specific the later on in the interviews you go. And so one point there that I'd like to add is that, like I said earlier, the earlier you start studying for all these components, the more comfortable you'll be when it comes to the interview scenario where you're really put in the spot. And then a few quick specific things about investment banking interviews. There are times when they'll just try to keep asking you questions until you don't know something to see how you handle getting flustered. So being able to, answer a bunch of questions in a row is really key. And this kind of ties into the follow-up emails as well. If you're in an interview and you really don't know the answer to something, you want to try to explain everything you do know that's relevant. And say, hey, I might not know exactly what you're asking for, but I know this component definitely plays a role. And so here's what I know about it. And then you can say a line as simple as, I'd be happy to follow up, do some research on my own after the interview and let you know what I wound up learning. And including a few sentences about, what you messed up with that question and what you wound up learning can go a long way in terms of showing that you're really curious in the field. You really cared about the interview. You knew you didn't know something and you were willing to take the step to learn it. So those are just a few tips for the IB interviews.
Okay, those are really helpful. And after this program, I will send around a technical interview question sheet to all the attendees. So thank you for walking us through behavioral and some of that more technical interview format as well. I think that's where, it gets really mysterious for our students is, as to what's coming. So we have a few more minutes. And this is the first time we've done this program with two guests. They've all been one-on-one. So I realized probably 6 o'clock is what we need to, or 1 hour is what we need to go for a two-person panel. So let's open this up to more student questions. We had a couple that came through in the chat. I saw, Will, that you responded to one about how many emails did you send out, cold emails? And we saw that about 100 to 150. And that may be, particularly for finance or investment banking, this number may change, depending upon the area that you're interested in. So other questions from our students, go ahead and you can send them in the chat, or you can turn on your mic, introduce yourself and ask your question. We do have one question on here, which is, what are some of the most challenging questions? I think we covered some of those in Danny and Will as they were discussing what some interview questions are typically in their fields. But is there anything else that comes to mind that are difficult questions, Will and Danny, maybe that will throw people off base?
I guess the one thing I would say, and this maybe is kind of a generic answer, but I would say kind of the most challenging question is just not having kind of good intel going into an interview about what it could entail. I remember, for instance, I had an interview with another company, and I was expecting it to be the first round interview to be a behavioral interview, and I got into the room and it was actually a case interview. And I was just totally kind of blindsided by not knowing what to expect there. And nowadays there's obviously having kind of through UVA several firms recruit every single year, so able to get kind of a sense of what types of interviews they've asked previous students, but just looking on maybe the perfect website, but just doing some research on Glassdoor or something about just learning more about kind of the interview process, or reaching out to if there's a analyst or someone from UVA that also went to the company that you're interviewing for, asking them what their interview process was and getting prepared beforehand is definitely something that I'd really recommend doing. Just that way, you're not like me and just kind of totally blindsided with what was happening for the first round interview. I
was also in a role where I got pretty blindsided in an interview, and it is not a great feeling. So I can definitely relate to that. So for kind of the IB interviews, there's a lot of really good resources online or with the Career Service Center. So I mentioned the Vault guides. There's a few other ones. I'm not sure the exact names, but there's behavioral guides, there's technical guides, accounting guides. Really, as much work as you want to put in, you can find stuff for. But just like the stuff that's simple, that you don't need to go crazy with it. I'd say a behavioral guide, just one behavioral guide to kind of get you thinking about those questions and getting some good responses is enough. I'd say one kind of technical guide. There's like a 400 IB essential guide that most people use, and they rank them from easy questions, medium questions to really hard ones. I feel like I only probably saw a few of the really hard ones ever show up. And oftentimes it kind of felt like it was a scenario where they were trying to see how much you knew. It wasn't really if you get everything, just if you could talk a bit about it. And then, yeah, so for me, probably some of the harder parts were accounting, because I didn't wind up taking my accounting course until my 4th year. So that was something I definitely had to put a lot of time to earlier on. So I'd say if you're able to in your schedules, do the financial and the managerial accounting courses earlier on, so you're a little more prepared. That'd be really helpful.
What do you think about training the street or other Wall Street prep type programs for students who may not be getting that financial modeling from their student groups or from their classes?
Yeah, I really don't know any person who works in investment banking from UVA or any school that I'm like people I'm friends with that did one of those courses, like paid for one of those courses.
Yep.
So I'd say it's pretty uncommon. I mean, if you do use it, it will 100% help you and teach you a lot, but you can totally get what you need from joining a club on campus, which will be more fun anyway, because you'll meet a lot of interesting people, studying on your own, and then just asking older people from UVA or other schools kind of what they did. I'd say it's helpful, but it is 100% not necessary.
Okay. Okay, great. The vault guides that Will was referring to are actually have been taken offline. So just actually this semester, Will. But econ collected some. And if you're an econ major, we do have them in Colab. But there are other fine resources in Handshake. If you go into Handshake and look in the career resource tab for business and technology careers, you will find those for investment banking in particular, and financial services. Okay, great. Other questions? You can send them in the chat or turn on your mics and introduce yourself. Okay, I have another question. What traits do you think are important in your roles? Traits for our students to have, develop, or just, innately they have these traits and qualities for them to be successful in roles with your firms, your particular jobs?
I'll go. Oh, you go.
Okay, cool. I'll start it off. So I'd say being curious is a really important trait and really easy to show just by asking good questions, by following up about things you didn't really know and did some outside research on, by trying to talk to a lot of different team members within the company you really like. That's an easy one. I'd say showing that you're analytical, because investment banking does work with numbers every single day, is great. And you can show that by talking about a few classes you did, like your econometrics class and some of the projects that you did. I was a research assistant at UVA. And so for my research role, I did econometric regressions and that analysis. And so being able to talk about that was like a good example of why I was really had strong analytical skills. I'd say just being really friendly is the easiest thing you can do and goes the longest way, because people will remember you if they just enjoyed the conversation they had with you about, whatever random things they did at UVA and you did at UVA. So just having like good energy when you're talking to people is really nice. And then I'd say showing that you are pretty diligent with your work and like to check it over is always good. And then just hardworking, just like give a few examples of all the things that you're involved in. And then an easy way to show that you're hardworking is just by having a strong GPA. I know my GPA was something that I really wanted to get up for my full-time recruiting, because I knew that it was a good way to kind of get your resume pulled from the pile. If you have a strong resume, but your GPA is low, you could get passed over. And I knew it was a simple way to kind of get mine pulled, at least for first rounders. So having a good GPA, showing that you care about your classes is the easiest way to show the hardworking.
Yep, that's a great answer there. And I guess it's the one thing I'll add to that is kind of more on like the kind of the qualitative side, just with regarding like kind of teamwork. I just think of like a traditional day for me, and like if it's like an 8 or 9 hour work day, like I'm probably in meetings for like over half the day, and so when you're on calls and kind of doing some like live problem solving, especially when we're working with multiple different people. And I know that sometimes, so many classes are, can be based on just like, you have 3 exams, right? And then there's maybe like 10% for like participation or, homework, but getting the opportunities to work and lead kind of group projects. And then on the like kind of, extracurricular side of things, getting that kind of like those leadership, experiences, I think could be really, really helpful and really beneficial into working in kind of a collaborative environment.
So for our students on the line, Pathway U is an assessment that you can take. It is on the Career Center's website, and I recommend it because it will help you assess really what your personality is yearns for, right? And then come up with some potential jobs where you might be a good fit. What Will and Danny are also talking about here is, kind of where you get your energy. You get your energy working in teams. You get your energy working alone. You want to know what a good fit is for you, for the firm, for the jobs that you're applying for, in addition to, your technical skills. But this, that's really important. And it's a two-way street, right? While you're interviewing while the employers are interviewing you, you're interviewing them. You want to make sure that this is a good fit for you also. You mentioned research, Will, and that is something that we're seeing more and more. Students who undertake research while they're on grounds undergraduate research have many opportunities at their fingertips, not necessarily going into academia, right? They might be doing academic research while they're here undergrad, but then they choose a job in the private sector or the public sector as well. Okay, great. So is your employer recruiting now? And when should students be looking for jobs or internships from your firms?
Yep. So the answer to my question for the Capital One side of things is yes. And they should be, I didn't check it to confirm, but it should be all listed within Workday. And I know prior to the pandemic, they offered several on grounds interviewing. I think it would all be, virtual interviews at this point. But there also is recruiting in the fall, and then there is some recruiting in the springtime as well. And I mean, by the springtime, not sure there's gonna be on grounds recruiting, TBD, but this fall is mostly gonna be virtual.
Yeah, so the main timelines for recruiting for investment banking are from the summer, starting in June or July, sometimes August for certain banks, kind of into the fall is when it wraps up. And then if you're younger, if you're second year, I know that UVA or B of A does some sophomore recruiting, second year recruiting, I believe starting around September, October. So there should be some roles open there. I don't think there's any more for the current post third year roles. I could check on that. And then there is full-time recruiting every single year to kind of fill gaps. And that's where I got my job from. So really every step of the process has opportunities for you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think Bank of America jobs, the last posting closed September 3rd. So that really aligns with the timeline you were discussing, Will. And students, this, as Danny mentioned, things are going to change with coronavirus. So whereas in past years, we really did have a pretty standard recruiting cycle up until 2020. So just keep your eyes open for changes and for firms that are interesting to you. Okay, last question for our panelists. What's next for you? It can be next, meaning a year or 2 years from now, or next right now, the next 6 weeks for you.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I guess it's kind of long-term career, so I guess over maybe within the next 5 years. I guess for me would be kind of continuing to hone, kind of stay where my feet are, in a sense of honing in on my current role, and just trying my best every single day to get better at that. But ultimately trying to gain additional experience on the more kind of leadership side of things, and ultimately trying to become a people leader. Easier said than done, but it's just something that is a goal for me. So just kind of continuing at that path was something that kind of where I would like to be going in the near term future here.
Great, thank you. Will?
Nice. Yeah. So right now I'm still pretty early on within my role. So I'm really just looking to to be a good teammate. Try to get myself recognized as a hard worker who's interested in the deals that we're doing right now. That's kind of like the shorter term goal, and just trying to meet all my teammates, especially when we go back to the office. And then the typical time cycle for most people in investment banking is typically 2 years. And then for Bank of America, usually about half the people, or a little over half, wind up leaving, and somewhere between maybe 30 to 40% will stay. Kind of varies by year based on the need. For myself, I definitely want more time in the role before I decide what I want to do. And then part of that's definitely outside of my control, but I don't see myself staying in investment banking forever. I'm personally really interested in the startup world. So I think, longer term, at some point I could really see myself trying to build a company of my own, working with friends to build a company, or joining something that already exists that I think is amazing, and trying to build it into something even better.
Okay, great. Well, we wish you a lot of success in those endeavors over the next few weeks and next few years. We hope that you'll stay in touch with us. Will and Danny, please stay on the line so we can talk with you about this program and see who's on board for office hours. Everyone else, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to see you. You're going to receive a follow-up evaluation from Maggie. You'll be entered into a drawing, incentives, if you fill out our evaluation. And our winner last month just got a $25 gift card to Roots. So thank you again, Will and Danny, and goodbye, everyone else. Look forward to seeing you next time.
I actually did have one more thought.
Yeah.
You mentioned at the beginning that if we did have something kind of as a conclusion to throw out there,
Sure.
I would say something that I've kind of definitely thought about after having finished up all the recruiting and starting my full-time role. The things you will remember from UVA the most are not being, fully consumed with the job search process. You're definitely going to remember the events you did on grounds, the games you went to, the friends you made, stuff like that. It can definitely be overwhelming. I know it felt overwhelming to me when I was first starting to think about recruiting and the job world. I would say the best piece of advice I ever got was to try to space it out, little goals at a time, build your way up there, because if you really do want a role, you definitely have time to get it no matter what. I didn't get my role until I was in my 4th year, and it was the role that I've been working for a long time. So I'd say stay positive about it, be patient, work a little bit at a time, and remember the things that are most important to you in college, and put your time towards that as well.
Thank you, Will. Okay, thanks everybody. Take care.